Howdy. Because I've already heard once before, I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch. So I'll try to make it quick. It's my pleasure this morning to give you an update on what the laboratory has been doing in regards of calculating the NOx emissions reductions from energy efficiency. Tomorrow I'll be talking about similar work that we'll be doing calculating the NOx emissions reductions from renewable energies in the state. As always, it's a pleasure to give a talk like this because I have a team of people that are doing the work, so I don't get all the credit, and you can see we've got a pretty good group here, as well as a lot of cooperation from a number of state agencies. I don't know if y'all have been around the TERP program from the beginning, but in the very early stages of the TERP program in around 2000, 2001, there was a lot of difficulty in just getting the units right in terms of reporting things. I think we've resolved that through a lot of cooperation with the different agencies, and we're able to now aggregate the numbers and put together a single number that then TCEQ can take a look at in regards of the state implementation plan. We've had a number of different legislative actions and responsibilities regarding these measurement of the NOx emissions reductions, and I'm not going to go through these, but they've been adding specific responsibilities that we need to accomplish, and we're going to talk about some of those going forward. One of the biggest successes that we've had so far, as you've heard, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in the breakout sessions, is the energy efficiency from the more efficient housing that's been taking place in the state. One of the contributors to that, we think, is certainly those individuals that have chosen to use the emissions, not the emissions reductions, but the code compliance calculator, which also gives emissions that the lab has put together called IC3. This is a web-based emissions reductions tool. It's easy to use. Normally when you simulate buildings, it's not easy to do, so it takes some work to try to understand how to do that. We've tried to take the pain out of this so that even homeowners and code officials can do the simulations. So entering your things like your site address, your address information, the number of bedrooms, the layout of the house, the information regarding the windows, insulation materials, efficiencies of your heating cooling units, your domestic water heating, the roof and the ceiling insulation levels, as well as any sort of shading on the house, then gives you a snapshot after a few minutes of how your house is performing compared to what a code compliant house would do. And with that information, once we get the house so that it's performing the way we think it needs to perform to comply with the code, we then issue a certificate to the homeowner. So this is something that can go in with the plans as a permanent record, and in addition we give them a stick-on label that can actually be mounted in the electrical panel, so regardless of whether that homeowner continues to be in that home or when the next homeowner takes over and purchases that home, they'll actually have a certificate that's registered in terms of just exactly what is it in that house that makes it energy efficient. Along with doing that, we've been able to accomplish the establishment of a registry of these homes, which allows us to actually count the number of homes in the different counties. So if we want to look at different facts, for example, we're looking at the air conditioners, how that's varying, either at code or above code for the different houses. And of course, we can count their certificates to date. Since 2011, just in the last year, we've had a substantial increase in the number of certificates exceeding 18,000, about 38,000 of those certificates since the beginning of the program that we established on the web page there. So we're beginning to get a lot of folks that are using this as a tool. When they use it, we then can go in and start looking at just exactly what is it on the characteristics of these houses that are making them efficient, and what can we do more of to reduce the energy use of these houses. All of this information is on our website. That's one of the things that we do as part of the TERP program is we produce reports. You can get to those reports on the TERP tab under Letters and Reports. We file them by year. So for example, if we look at the reports in the last year, we had information about the verification process that we went through with the code calculator. We had some requests from Houston in terms of looking at some of the amendments that they wanted to have to their code to make them special to Houston but still compliant with the code. We did a fair number of studies with validating the engine that we use for the simulation against some other more accurate engines, such as the Energy Plus and the Trensis simulation program. And then we filed, of course, our preliminary report, which comes out quickly in August. We're running about a year behind, so 2010 was filed in 2011. And then our annual reports, which are about 1,500 pages of graphs and tables and that sort of a thing, in 3 volumes for 2010. In 2011, we also filed our wind and renewables report, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. 2012, we continued to do some validation work, in particular on ground coupling issues with the simulation model. And then we looked at some work that we first started with the city of Arlington, and then we expanded to the whole state to look at recommendations not only for residential, but also for small office, retail, and restaurants. So we're starting to get some additional recommendations that can make some of these commercial buildings more energy efficient. And then, of course, we filed our renewables report. We still have yet to file our annual report with the TCEQ, which is coming out in the next couple of months. So this is an example of just the reports since the last CATEE conference that are hanging on our website. We think that's the best way is to get the information out there, and then typically people download these and they ask us questions if they want to know more information about the reports. An example of one of those reports is the 15% above code that we're required to do. In this case, it's the 2009 code. These are filed for 17 different counties. This was not only performed for residential, but office and small retail. What we basically do is we produce, we think of it like a place map. But that place map basically contains kind of a shopping list in the upper part of the report there of the energy efficiency measures. For each of those measures, then, we calculate individually what the annual savings would be, source energy savings with the 2009 IECC. We calculate the actual dollar savings. That seems to be the biggest question we get from folks is, you know, I'm putting more money into my house. When am I going to get it back? I'm putting more money into my office building. When am I going to get it back? And then, of course, they want to know how much it costs to do these. So we have to survey the market. We have to work with a lot of the contractors and the suppliers to figure out just exactly what does it cost to put these into the buildings, which, of course, gives us the simple payback in years. So we're always mindful of these things, trying to make sure we put our best foot forward in terms of getting the energy efficiency that we want, but at the same time, not overburdening the building owners so that they have too much of an upfront cost. We then bundle these in terms of groups of energy efficiency measures so that those groups are put forward in terms of 15%. And there's 3 groups that are listed there. And this is the basis for these reports, which are hanging out there on the above code energy efficiency. What we found with this is that it's actually a precursor to the next code, more or less. The code cycles tend to go on the order of about 15% more efficient each time there's a new code cycle. So we've had a number of cities, City of Houston, City of San Antonio, City of Arlington, North Central Texas COG, Austin, who are asking for these reports, and then we're customizing them so that they can deliver to their homeowners not only code compliance, but also above code if they wish to go there. In terms of the statewide savings from code compliance, well, actually, we had a couple people that asked us, you know, why don't you add up how much money we've actually saved the state from the initiation of the building code from the beginning of the TERP program? So we went back and we actually have the count from the state. We get that from the state demographer, and we use that to count the number of houses. We then went through the different code cycles, the 2000, the 2001 supplement, the 2003 and the 2006 IECC that have occurred between 2000 and 2009. And we counted the number of houses, so you can see by year. Of course, we had a bit of a drop starting in 2007. I guess that's not working, but starting right here in 2007, we've had a drop in the number of houses which you're all familiar with. We've also had a slight increase in the energy costs as well. So those were factored into the calculations. The results show a rather phenomenal number. $776 million in electricity savings over this period, about $1 billion in demand savings during this period, and that equals about $2 billion in terms of energy that's been saved because of code compliance just in single-family residential. Of the demand savings, just before I get to that, but the cost of that, interestingly enough, is only $760 million to the homeowners. So there's been a crossover already in that period in terms of the group in total getting their money back. Of the demand savings, what we realize is that it's basically one coal plant that we didn't have to build in the last 9 years. So if you think this energy efficiency is working, it is working. It's working dramatically well. And if you've actually looked at the newer houses compared to the houses that are 10 years old or 20 years old, there's a huge difference in the utility bills and the demand reductions, as we've already heard from some of the other speakers today. By the way, the emissions reduction, since we have all the numbers, we can count those. It's about 15,000 tons of NOx a year, which is like removing 800,000 cars from the road in terms of equivalence. So it is making a big difference in terms of not only reducing the cost of operating a residence, but in reducing the emissions that are associated with that. That's filed in this report as well that's on our website. So when we look at some other things that are on the horizon, for example, one of the things that we know that's coming, it's taking a little bit longer to come to fruition, but clearly that's the movement towards a more efficient lighting source, off of incandescents over to compact fluorescents, perhaps LEDs. We know primarily how much energy that's going to save. We don't know exactly when it's going to save. So for Texas, for example, in 2012, because we know the number of households and we have a pretty good idea of how many lights are in each of those households, we're able to calculate approximately 5.6 gigawatt hours of energy savings, which is about $40 per household. Statewide, that's about $400 million, and a 10-ton of NOx reductions emissions on an ozone season day. We go fast forward to 2017 and 2030. We think that this is another potential big winner in terms of reducing not only the electricity use, but also the potential demand reductions in the state. So we're looking forward to resolving some of the political as well as technical issues on getting that in place. Likewise, we've had several folks ask us about water savings. Both the Sierra Club and the Public Citizen have had much interest in that. So we took a look at that, essentially. We've seen that we've already calculated the savings from our co-compliance and our total TERP reductions, which includes not only energy efficiency but renewables. From that number, we can actually go ahead and use a conversion factor, one that the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has put forth, but about 400 gallons per megawatt hour of electricity use. And we can come up with the following water savings for the state. From single family alone, about 1,700 acre feet of water per year that didn't have to be consumed by the power plants because they didn't have to produce that electricity, and about 32,000 acre feet of water for the total TERP program. And that includes, of course, the very large reduction because of the wind farms that are coming online. So not only are we saving energy, we're also reducing the water that's not having to be consumed by the plants because of the reduced demand from energy efficiency and renewable energy. We follow the criteria that EPA has published. Yeah, you heard this earlier from Susanna, to quantify the emissions reductions, and that's where the bookkeeping takes place. The numbers that we put forward to the state have to be auditable, which means we literally have to go through a process with TCEQ and EPA to actually source the numbers and make sure that they're not only quantifiable, they're surplus, so they're not being counted in other programs. It's enforceable, which of course for code compliance, that's true. And then of course the record keeping is in the reports that you see there. We work together with a number of state agencies, including the Public Utilities Commission, State Energy Conservation Office, ERCOT with the data from the wind farms. We pull all those numbers together, we roll them up into total annual numbers as well as daily numbers for the ozone season period. We can then report those out by program. We can report it by county, or we can report it by the NOx emissions reductions in terms of the SIP regions. We can also go forward and take a look at the ozone season period, which is a particular slice in time during the summer when we've got a lot of temperatures and conditions that are conducive to ozone. And we can break it out again by either the program, the county, or the SIP region. And this is what it looks like here for the last year. We're pushing about 60, 61 tons per ozone season day. That's up from a number in the 50s from the last year. The largest part of that, as you can see, is the green power from the wind energy, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. So all of these are published on our website, and I think I made up a little more time, so we're ready for lunch.